Hi guys, it's Matt here from MCS-books. Now today I want to talk about books that make you think and thinking for pleasure. So a lot of books out there that I read kind of fall into two categories, either the books that I just read to enjoy or the books that I read to learn more about a specific topic or to engage with mentally, to have to think about what this book is trying to tell me. And one of the books that's most recently I've read and have enjoyed because it really made me think was this book, The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. What I liked about this book was that it wasn't a book that I had to rip through as quickly as possible. It was actually a book that took me quite a while to read. And there were times when I contemplated maybe leaving it for a bit and then picking something else up. And actually I was kind of reading the H.P. Lovecraft collection at the same time as I was reading this, because it was nice to kind of just put it down and pick up something else, like short stories to dip in and out of. But that's not because this book was bad or because it was slow. It was just because there were so many points in it that I had to think about. There were so many themes within this book which just made it so much more worthwhile when it finished. So I think I would rate this book maybe about 4.5 stars. It's not a 5-star read, but it definitely was enjoyable. There were so many different topics inside it that I hadn't actually been expecting to be explored inside it. So let me read to you the synopsis and then I'll talk to you about it more afterwards. So it says, in 1950, a young doctor named Norton Perrina embarks on an expedition to a remote Micronesian island in search of a rumoured lost tribe. There, he encounters a strange group of forest dwellers who appear to have attained a form of immortality that preserves the body but not the mind. Perrina uncovers their secret and returns with it to America, where he soon finds great success. But his discovery has come at a terrible cost, not only for the islanders, but for Perrina himself. Disquieting yet thrilling, The People in the Trees is an anthropological adventure story with a profound and tragic vision of what happens when cultures collide. It marks a debut of a remarkable new voice in American fiction. So of course this is her debut book, but Hanya Yanagihara is most famous for her book, A Little Life, which I haven't actually read yet. But this one, I picked it up because I was about to start my master's and the concept of the anthropological adventure kind of really made me intrigued. And I really thought it was going to touch upon sort of the ethics of anthropology, why we study cultures and what happens when we then explore them and exploit them academically. But there's just so much more to it than what it kind of says in the blurb. So Norton Perrina is actually, it says he's a young doctor. He's a medical doctor. So he's hired on this anthropological adventure or this field work to analyse the tribe's health and stuff. So he's there just to be the doctor, ultimately. He's not there to do any of his own research, he's just there to support the anthropologist that has hired him. Throughout the book, it's told from the point of view of Norton Perrina, but there's more to it than that, which I'm going to explain to you later. But he raises the sort of question of what science is true science and, the acquisition of knowledge as truth. So he's very much under the impression, which, of course, in the time that this book is set was a massive debate. He's under the impression that only natural sciences are the real science, and anthropology isn't really worthy of knowing about, of learning, of studying. So the fact that he's actually in this fieldwork that's funded by an anthropology institute and he's working alongside an anthropologist is very interesting to see how he's kind of balancing his idea and yet being funded to do something that that furthers his own career. So that was an interesting topic throughout. And then what I wanted to say was that because it's told from the point of view of him, from the very get-go, we're actually being told his story from his point of view. It's been edited by one of his friends. So it's like a memoir that has been edited and notes have been taken in. And the friend who's done the editing even says at the start, there's some bits that I might have cut, but I try to keep it as true as possible. So then you get this really interesting sort of truth in itself. When we're talking about the value of knowledge and truth and what truth actually is. You're being told this by an unreliable narrator because it's been edited. And Dr. Farina is telling his story because he's just recently been charged for sexual misconduct, I guess you can say. So he's almost trying to give his side of the story, but there's so much more to it. It's more like a memoir of his life and how things got to the place where he committed the crime and was then later charged. So there's kind of this whole, how much of his word can you actually take as truth? Because I don't think he's trying to clear his name, but he's trying to give his version of events. So of course there's a little bit of bias in that. And then they are later edited by his friend, who adds another layer of bias, which kind of creates this tense atmosphere for the entire read when you're not sure who's telling the truth, how truthful some events are, and what is the value of truth within this story. So like it makes you really think all throughout. You're like, oh, this interesting thing has happened, but how can I actually believe that? And I loved that. That's why I had to sometimes put it down, because I had to put it down and leave it for a while, because I was kind of thinking and mulling over, like, oh, I don't know, like something intense has happened and I don't know how to feel about it, because I'm only being told from one perspective and I can't trust that perspective. So it was really, really a thrilling read throughout, and I really appreciated that side of it. So there are, of course, more themes which kind of enhance the whole thing. In fact, actually, the whole clash of cultures is just a side effect of the whole story itself. So that's almost like not touched upon as much. And the way that it does come out is very much a question of is very much a question of the acquisition of knowledge, and then what do you do with that knowledge that you've acquired, and the exploitation of this of people that comes from this knowledge, and sharing the knowledge for humans' sake. So this whole sense of immortality very much kind of enhances the topic and the themes of natural science for progression, and natural science as truth, and natural science as good for the human race. And yet the anthropologists who aren't doing real science, who are just there to observe, who don't want to share things that they found out because they understand the effects that will have on the people they've been studying. So there's that balance, which also creates this interesting tension between all the characters, and you know what has happened, because at the start it tells you like what happens, and then it tells you how it got there. So you know what's happened, and you can see it happening as you go along, and it just creates this real bubble of tension inside you that is kind of uncomfortable to read at some points, but really, really enjoyable at the end of the day. So there's also topics of homosexuality which come up in this, and I guess because of the time that it's set in, the question of paedophilia comes up with the homosexuality, which really makes you question this whole like truth again, because there's some instances of paedophilia where it is kind of justified and you can understand it, and there's quite a horrific scene that happens throughout, and the anthropologist and the natural scientist, Dr. Farina, kind of react to it very differently because they're unsure of what to make of it because of the environment that it's happened in. So it's all very much questioning our like preconceived ideas of what is a true way to interpret actions and how does this affect. So that makes you also think throughout, like, where is this going when the characters are reacting so differently to the same thing, and yet there's another character. I don't want to give anything away because I want you guys to read this and to enjoy it. But I do just want to say that it really does make you think. It's not a fast read. It can be quite a slow read, and I feel personally it did require that sense of putting it down, thinking, mulling it over. But then when it finished, actually the ending was a bit disappointing. I wasn't too keen on the way it ended because something else happened which you had seen coming all along, and you kind of knew it was, but then it was just kind of, I think I would have liked a little bit more left open-ended. Well, I guess it was open-ended in a way. It was a tricky ending. It was open-ended, but it wasn't at the same time. And I kind of felt I feel like I wanted more from the ending. Like, I feel like it was just so close to getting exactly what I wanted, and then it just kind of like went fizzled out, and I was a bit like, oh, okay. So I don't think any of that bit made sense about the ending, but that's the only reason I would probably stop it from being a 5-star read, was just because I wasn't as keen on the ending. But the rest of it throughout, it kept me like gripped, and I just wanted to know what was going to happen next and how it was going to happen. And it was just really interesting to get these perspectives of the acquisition of knowledge, of truthfulness in science, and the ethics of studying other cultures from a natural science point of view and a social science point of view. So I would suggest this, especially if you do have an interest in either natural science or anthropology and its effect on real world issues as opposed to staying in academia. This book kind of can deal with that quite well, and yes, I would suggest it. So that's all I got to say about this book today. I think it's nice to be able to give a good review, so I shall see you soon, hopefully. Bye bye.